Good morning on the West Coast and good afternoon on the East Coast. Today is Wednesday, April 27th, and for all those baseball fans out there, happy Babe Ruth Day. I'm John Urrington, CEO of the Performance-Driven Marketing Institute, a 501c6 not-for-profit trade association dedicated to protecting, promoting, and advancing the direct-to-consumer and direct response advertising industries. And on behalf of the entire PDMI family, it's my pleasure to welcome you back to yet another fun-filled and exciting episode of the PDMI Take 20. As a reminder, the PDMI Take 20 is a quick-hitting roundtable discussion led by industry experts on trending topics all in 20 minutes or less. Today, we're joined by Cody Tunney of Yangaroo and Jessica Hogue of Innovid, and we'll be taking a second look at frictions and audience measurement. However, before we get started, please allow me to do a little bit of housekeeping. If you'd like to ask a question, and we encourage you to do so, please use the questions tab located in the control panel. Also, please note, you're welcome to ask questions throughout today's conversation, but we'll hold all replies to every question to the end of today's discussion. Alrighty, folks, with that said, it's my pleasure to introduce today's moderator. He once won a game of Connect 4 in only 3 moves. He's the fearless Chris Foster. Chris is Vice President of New Business Development at Modern Postcard, a direct marketing agency located in Carlsbad, California. In addition to his day job, Chris teaches brand strategies at UCSD extension courses, and he's the chairperson of the PDMI's Brand Response Council. As always, Chris, it's a pleasure to have you here today, my friend. Thank you so much, and take it away.
Thank you, John, for that wonderful introduction, and thank you, ladies, for being a part of this. We are so excited to have everybody back to frictions and audience measurement. It's such a big topic. It couldn't be contained in just one episode. We needed 2 episodes to really flesh it out and talk about this with the weight that it deserves. So welcome to part 2. Last week, we discussed wish lists of agencies and brands, current challenges with how Nielsen measured what was really happening with cross-device attribution, and what might be next with mergers and data specialization. This episode, we're going fathoms deeper into the topic, and we're going to explore complications and solutions that are revealing themselves in this new media landscape. You know, if general lessons of life apply to business, we know that. And the general lesson of life is that everything changes. Absolutely happens with business. So the question is, how will this key aspect, audience measurement, in the response ecosystem evolve and adjust to a changing world where phones, laptops, tablets, big screens, AVOD, streaming, linear, cable, pre-roll, YouTube, and perhaps even a good old-fashioned Thursday night sitcom on a real old-fashioned network? How are all of these things competing for consumers' attention and action? So we're so excited to have these experts here to talk about this. Cody, I'm going to ask the first question to you to kick things off. Why are we talking about this now, and why do you think there's some urgency with these discussions?
That's a really good question. I think that there's 3 key reasons why we're talking about this now. The first one is with Nielsen. So there were issues with Nielsen's measurement methodology during COVID, which created doubt in broadcasters, agencies, and brands' minds about the accuracy of their audience measurement methodology. That allowed a little sliver of opportunity for challengers to come up into this space and perhaps revise the way that we measure media. The second thing that contributes to this is that video consumption is changing. We all know that linear and CTV are now just video, and we can measure screen level viewing with ACR data, data from smart TVs, and that's particularly interesting to performance brands as they're starting to match IP address level data from smart TVs with website actions. And then the third thing is the upfronts. So the upfronts is where 85% of national TV media is traded, and that's happening in 1 month from now. And that's a big part of where audience guarantees come into place and how those guarantees are being made.
That's a fantastic answer. I sure wish we had this episode several months ago, because if the upfronts are in 1 month, the way business works, that's like next week. That's really tough. One of the things that I loved about last week's topics that carries over to exactly what you said, Cody, is the creation of doubt in the measurement of audience, kind of that thin edge of the web, thin edge of the wedge. What I've learned in bazillion years in direct marketing is that attribution isn't always going to be precise. Data is more often directional and not definitive. And that belief of attribution is such an important driver for business decisions, more so than just an actual number. If there's doubt in the attribution and it casts a shadow on the belief of what's working or not working, that's a very powerful influence for every human being, right? We are humans. Beyond being marketers, we're all humans. And belief is something that's really powerful and a powerful motivator and driver of decision making. So if there's a question about the belief of the measurement, creating that doubt that really, I think, gives people pause in terms of where their dollars are going. I also love the revealing of a brand new industry marketing buzzword that we can use, screen level viewing. SLV, right? It's like the new thing, right? You get credit for it, don't Cody? The SLVs of the industry. So with all of that being said, and upfronts being in a month, I guess, Jessica, my first question then would go to you. Kind of going around the horn after that intro, is in this new landscape, right? What kind of confidence do you have personally / professionally in the output of these metrics?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. The landscape's totally different. I think we tend to think about that in terms of consumer change and also the providers in the space, but I think one of the things that's not talked about as much is the whole technique of how we're going about measuring these screen level viewing audiences today is also different. So what's happening now, and it's been in development for a couple of years now, is in addition to panels, we've got the advent of ACR technology or return path data that's afforded us an entirely different set of inputs into understanding viewer activity within a larger set of homes. And so why that's important, I think, is it's shifted us towards more of an impression basis. Something we don't talk about a lot in this sort of change of currency is today, historically, we've been measuring an entire ad pod, if you will, as a proxy for the viewership. But what we're really talking about in this new impression based landscape, if you will, is a move to spot level impressions. I bring that up because I think it gets us to a level of precision, if you will, and granularity. And part of that is the territory of where there may have been doubt before, right? What's not being picked up because the measurement's not granular or scaled enough to be able to account for not all of the sort of diversity of different regions around the country, but also all the different ways that people view. And of course, this is totally happening now because of you've got different types of streaming behavior, the shift away from live linear where it's a one-to-many type of viewing experience. So it just begets the need for all of that granularity to be able to see the texture. So for me, the confidence I have is all about, the quality of the inputs is what gives us the quality of the outputs. And I think this shift towards getting to impression level and the tonnage of data that we as an industry have to work with and sort of ingest to start to reflect that out gives me a great deal of confidence that we're set up to be able to measure particularly the behaviors that we're seeing now in this one video environment, which is inclusive of all types of television viewing.
Sure, I love it. And I'm going to keep on, I'll stick with you, Jessica, if you don't mind, for the next question, because the natural one is, what do all these changes in audience measurement mean for performance brands who are spending the money and need to sell product?
Yeah, well, it's interesting, right? Because in some cases, maybe not that much. I think performance brands are sort of accustomed to working with lots of data, that there's speed between the exposure and the response. So I just sort of turn it on its head a little bit. I think, one perspective I have is we see a lot of big national brands that are learning this muscle memory from their performance brethren, right? That ability to create, literally no distance between, I know someone saw the tier 1 creative or the tier 2 creative, and now I'm able to see what the response is. I mean, Chris, you mentioned it in your opener. There is this belief that, hey, it's, we can associate those things quickly enough that we're able to do an optimization, and the data stands up to being able to make changes. That, I think, is the biggest sort of transformation that we're seeing in the market. And this applies to performance and big national brands too. It's about the speed with which we can make the next best decision, whether that's for media optimization or creative optimization.
I love that, the speed of the next best decision, because digital marketers are familiar with that. If they're all involved, changes and adjustments with social media programs or email programs is easy to do, and there's a speed of response, and there's a call and response mechanism that happens very different when you're talking about those kind of media ads. So I guess, Cody, I'll ask you the same question. What do the changes in the audience measurement mean for performance brands? Similar to Jessica, or do you have some other thoughts that are analogous?
Yeah, no, I totally agree that that the speed at which we're making changes is going to evolve the industry, right? And in terms of what changes in audience mean for performance brands, there is the precision, right? The industry is forced to evolve. With all of these options, we have to pay attention, right? Because with more choices and options, there could be better outcomes, and that's our job, is to know what's working and what's not. The second part is attribution, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but it is becoming more deterministic with QR codes, IP address level data, smart TV, ACR. It's just more information is getting us closer to better decisions, right? And I know, Chris, you said data is directional. Yes, but the data should be as precise as possible to inform the best direction that we can use to change.
No, I love that. Go ahead.
That's it. You know, we have more options now. There's linear isn't the only choice for performance brands. There's CTV, and that is really proving its value and driving options.
Well, what I love about that is when you talked earlier about, Jessica, you mentioned kind of an ad pod as a proxy for viewership. I think that, marketers in 2022 really don't like proxies. Right. A proxy is a little bit too nebulous and shadowy in terms of how we're spending money. I think especially in terms of contrast to other channels where you can get that precision, Cody, that you had mentioned, to be as precise as possible. So in this landscape now where precision is going to be valued, right? What barriers then, where new challenger brands are coming up? You mentioned it earlier, Cody. Nielsen's kind of has a little bit of doubt, but they're evolving and they're changing. We know that they will, right? They're a healthy, strong, vibrant, innovative company with smart folks just like you. They're going to change and they're going to evolve, but it opened up the door for some challenger brands. So challenger brands like iSpot or Vizio or LG Ads, they've got to have, what do they have to do to get a seat at the table? And Cody, I'll ask that question back to you.
Yeah, my real opinion on this is their data needs to be aggregated. And I think that iSpot is leading the charge on that in aggregating the data from the different TV manufacturers. But the sample size has to be big enough to give confidence in the results, right? Yeah.
Great. Jessica, what are you thinking? What are some of those barriers that those challenger brands have to face?
Yeah, I think the industry at large, and inclusive of all the companies that you mentioned and others, are sort of toiling away at a couple of big proof points. One, can we re-architect the foundation of measurement using these different inputs, right? I mentioned it before, but we are shifting away from a world where it was panel first and then we had census to kind of round out the edges. I think it's very fair to say we're moving towards, whether we call them deterministic or census-based inputs, as a more core of the foundation, and panel in some cases used as more of a calibration instrument. So can we as an industry sort of re-architect enumeration and measurement on those fundamentals? We have to prove that out. And we sit on top of ad serving data, which gives us impressions at scale. We're a big believer that needs to be an input to get the kind of depth that we need. That's number one. Number two is then we're talking about a whole new set of inputs, more deterministic, if you will. Can we connect those to the performance metrics that we talked about before in a way that serves both, small local advertisers, mid-market, national brands. I mean, there's this whole other conversation around how we connect the halo of brand advertising to the, in-market creative from a tier 2. So those things need to be proven out from a technology perspective. For me, though, I think that the biggest proof point is it all comes back to the basics. And we like to throw these terms around, but you have to be transparent about how you do what you do. You can't grade your own homework. You have to measure more than your own backyard. I mean, granted, I live in New York. I don't really have much of a backyard, but you get the idea. And you have to do all of that with consistency and quality every single day. So those sound like basics, but I know I spend most of my time with big brands on all sides, and those things are important. And then you get to do all the other cool stuff. So I think that as an industry, we still have to remind ourselves that we have to do the basics and do them well and consistently.
Well, I do like that concept. That was excellent answers, team. I do love that concept of maybe different levels of sharpness of the data, right? You mentioned census and then panels maybe for refining. So it might not be that there's one ring to rule them all, right? It might not be a complete ubiquitous data platform that can do everything, but maybe there are certain specializations and brands of different sizes using different channels, whether they're local or national, choose different platforms for certain kinds of measurement, right? Either the gross big metrics or the refining and the sharpening. So I think that will be really interesting. Plus, I think it creates a lot of opportunities for sharper minds to figure out where they can play. Everyone likes the chance to compete, right? So if there's a chance for smaller start up businesses to compete with Nielsen for specific measurements, I think that's very exciting for the industry. We're going to wrap up with one last question. It's gone like that as usual. So Cody, I'll ask you, when you look at kind of the year, what is one big thing that you think will occur in terms of audience measurement by the close of 2022?
So what we're doing now is we're dissecting every single piece of the process, right? As Jessica said, we're evaluating what's an impression, right? We're laser focused on these little teeny tiny components that lead up to, the end result when we zoom out and, the best attribution methodologies. So by the end of 2022, what I would like to see is a unified impression across CTV and linear. So connecting the data, connecting the creative between those two sides, linear and CTV, to provide a consolidated view, which can hopefully improve the outcomes.
All right. Do you think that'll happen? What's your odds?
I think we're getting close.
Okay. Very good. Jessica, what's the big thing that you see?
I mean, I would love to say that we planned this, but we didn't. But I was going to say the exact same thing, and I would go a step further to say that for me that exists today. Right? We do have the ability to connect linear and streaming and provide that holistic video view, using impressions as a sort of foundation for the household, and then being able to reconcile, whether that ad was rendered in linear, whether it was rendered for the first time in streaming, and bring that all together. I think I would go a step further to say, those deals are being done today, those campaigns are being launched today. The big thing that I'm sort of struck by is, a couple of years ago when we started measuring streaming was always incremental. It was like added on to linear. Is it a way to, find my audience that I didn't already reach? And I think as we're, looking at the upfronts right now in 2022, a lot of what we hear in the market is, there's been enough of a shift outside of traditional viewing behaviors that streaming is right there at the starting blocks as a way to build reach and scale and drive performance. So I think it'll be a really interesting year to see what the lessons learned, because I think we're out of the experimental phase when it comes to convergent TV.
Excellent. Well, that's fantastic. And we are at past 20 minutes. Like we said, this goes back like lightning when you have such talented folks on the panel. So terrific job, team. You guys were just spot on. Your first pass is a Take 20 as a duo, and you both hit grand slams. So That's wonderful. John, I think we probably have questions from the audience, and I'm curious as to what they are.
We do, and I think we have time for about 3 of them, so let me throw them at you now. Are agencies and brands driving the shift in audience measurement, or is it the tech side of the business that's doing so?
Well, that's a great question. I can jump in. For years I've worked on sort of different sides of it. I think in some cases we've certainly heard from the sell side and the technology side that there are new and different ways to better sort of build the building blocks of how to report on their audience, right? If you think about the media seller, their job is to provide the viewing environment and the forum to deliver that audience. And we've certainly heard loud and clear from the likes of NBC and many others that they believe that there's a new way to do that. By the same token, there's been so many moves by both independent agencies and then consortiums of representing different aspects of the brand community, also saying in their own way, we need to also measure, have a full sort of understanding of our consumer wherever they go throughout that journey. And so I think for the first time, in many respects, we're seeing both sides of the market voice need for change, but also putting real blueprints on the table about how to go about it. So I think it's pretty balanced. I think the underlying question is in the economics, right? There's some parts of measurement that have been historically underpinned by certain parts of the ecosystem, and hopefully that balance will shift as the needs and demands from both the buy and sell side also shift.
Great feedback, Jessica. Thank you. Cody, you want to chime in, or should we jump to the next question?
No, I mean, I totally agree with Jessica on this one. Brands and agencies, in my opinion, they benefit from the most precise data available, right? Because they're doing the research on where to place the media for the best outcomes, right? The broadcaster's job in this is to measure the audience on their network and promote programs that will deliver the audience. So the precision, not that broadcasters don't care about this issue, they do very much, but agencies and brands are really going to be the ones driving the precision and the change in the measurement methodology.
Agreed. Nicely said. Here's a 2-part question, and it's kind of a TV versus CTV versus digital kind of question, so it's interesting. As ad occurrence technology improves our ability to track and measure linear TV, CTV, and digital TV, are the data trends showing favorability by the brands to a particular type of media? And is there a particular type of media that is driving attribution?
That's a very complex question.
It's a tough one, yeah, but.
So I think to Jessica's point that, there are different audiences in linear as there are in CTV as digital. So, I describe it like trick-or-treating in your neighborhood. You can hit all of the houses easily in your neighborhood, but then to get more candy, you got to go outside of your neighborhood, right? And so you get a certain audience in linear, and then you got to go out into other media to get more audience. And that's just the way it works. And then is there any one that's contributing to attribution? I'm going to throw that one over to Jessica, because that's really more of an attribution question than an ad distribution question.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a great question, and I wish maybe we can move that to an offline conversation and circle back, but I don't think that there's a one size fits all. It's certainly, for me, in my experience, it depends on the campaign and what's in the campaign brief and what all those media are there to do. I don't think we can really generalize. I will leave you with this thought, though, particularly when it comes to connected TV. Unlike broadcast, and to some degree, unlike even sort of digital video, although it has these capabilities too, connected TV has all sorts of other, sort of capabilities that come along with it, right? So yes, it can be used as a reach vehicle, and then we can sort of assess, and attribute how well it does that job. But we see, many brands also using it as a performance vehicle. through things like personalization, interactivity, QR codes, and all the rest of it. So I do think, it sort of depends on how we're trying to use connected TV and what job we're hiring it to do. Can we measure it? Yes, that's the good thing. But, where it is more performant than another media vehicle, I think it really kind of goes back to the execution and the marketing brief.
No, and also too on that, while not in the industry, my curiosity is stemmed from generational shifts, right? Does Generation Z show proclivities towards one behavior or another, or one media environment versus another? I know, for example, my older daughters haven't watched television in their memory, like a traditional television program. And I grew up watching black and white TV. That's how old I am. So it's an interesting thing where they have a completely different habit of viewing and consuming content than I ever could. And they're in their formative years now. And they're just starting to open up their pocketbooks, hopefully in the next couple of years, right? Hopefully they can pay for themselves. But the idea is that there could be some very interesting, like you said, Jessica, I don't think it's a one size fits all. I don't think it's a big brush stroke that all Generation Z behaves the same. But I would be very curious to see if there are some characteristics that emerge from generational behaviors.
Good feedback from all three of you. And Cody, just to point out, I like your trick-or-treating analogy. More candy, more better. I totally agree. Oh, hey, one more question. I think we got time for one more question. So this is an interesting one. With all the rage being focused on TV attribution, is there any fear that TV's long-time benefit, brand building, will be overlooked in the drive to optimize short-term outcomes?
I would venture to say, there's some risk there, but I think, I do think it sort of goes back to what the objective is. There's so many great research studies out there that have for decades shown the brand building and the sort of long-term lifetime value effect of television. It really comes back to how we want to redefine what television means in that experience. And Chris, you were just talking about this, right? Like my kids refer to watching TV as, scrolling through apps on the screen. They still think about it as TV, and those, they're still watching ads sometimes and having that experience too. So for them it's yes, it's a different behavior, but we all watch the Super Bowl, they're all seeing the commercials, they're still having those experiences. And I think it kind of, for me at least, it comes back to the creative, the content and the viewing. Again, it provides the venue, but I think there's something so powerful, and our technology is a big creative engine at the end of the day. So we are certainly passionate about this topic. There's no question in my mind that all of the sort of digital functionality that comes along with these new forms of TV, they just make the creative storytelling so that much better, enriching. And so, yeah, I think that we'll learn new ways to measure the efficacy over longitudinal periods of time, but I don't think it'll be overlooked. I think it'll just be a question of how we go back and sort of relearn perhaps some things that we've known for a while, but we have new tools to help us understand.
Awesome.
Cool. Fantastic. Good feedback and good response to that. So branding's never dead. It's just we build upon it, which I kind of like. Let me jump back in here and join you guys. One moment, please. There I am. Chris, Cody, Jessica, awesome session. Thank you so much for your insights. It's amazing how fast 20 minutes flies by when you're having fun. You're all welcome back next time, of course, or the next time we do some topic on this. Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as I did. Before we close out, I'd like to take a moment to invite you to join our next PDMI's episode of the Take 20, hosted May 11th at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. I'd also like to remind you that PDMI's fall conference, PDMI West, is scheduled for October 24th to 26th in San Diego at the Hard Rock Hotel. Registration is now open. thepdmi.com, visit thepdmi.com and get your badges today. Thanks everyone so much, and make it a great day. We'll see you next time.